Now, speaking of gear, you have had a chance to beat on a piece of technology that I've used for a long time and you used to use. You are back to using some Drobo, Scott. Let's talk about this here. I've been a fan for a long time, and you and I respectfully agreed not to talk, but the company recently completely revved its product line with 3 new products that have come out. And what do you think? You've been beaten on it.
So here's the deal. Anyone that knows the history of PhotoFocus knows that I used to be a very big Drobo proponent. Then there were some problems and I backed away. We change sponsors here at PhotoFocus. That's the real world. And sometimes we do it because people get all they need from us in the way of sponsorship. Sometimes we do it because, they want to move on to somebody else. Sometimes we do it because we're not a good fit. We weren't a good fit for a bit. But I heard about the Drobo 5D, and that's what I want to talk about today. And I'm not sure if they named it the 5D after the Canon 5D
they did not. I work with Drobo in my video business as well a little bit. We've done some behind the scenes videos from time to time. And when they told me it was the 5D, I was like, Really? And they're like, what? It's 5 drives. It's a logical name. I'm like, you all need to look around a little bit more. But they insisted and they did the search. And,
yeah, I know. Anyway, what happened was, you've been bugging me for months to give them another look, and I was
skeptical to say the least.
Skeptical is a nice way to say it. Thank you. But finally broke down, so I got one in the shop, and we did everything but put a flamethrower to it. I mean, stuff that would make a grown man cringe or cry, we did. I was messing with it. I put 3 of the 5 drives in. I put 3 terabyte drives in. So I had 9 terabytes, roughly 7 of storage. And then I was recording something from a video recorder right onto the Drobo, and I yanked the drive. Nothing happened. Everything was good. Put the drive back in.
Let me just clarify that. While the unit was writing data, he popped out a drive. Yeah, which is not something you would normally do ever on any computer. That's kind of like driving an engine and just saying, oh, let's just remove a cylinder to see what happens in the middle of going 60 miles an hour. Or in your case, 200.
Didn't miss a beat. Played back the video, pulled the drive, didn't miss a beat. Then I thought, okay, I know what I'll do. And it has 5 bays. That's why it's called the 5D. So I inserted 2 more 3 terabyte drives thinking, oh, well, it's going to have to stop and reformat because it's now got, now it's got 15 terabytes and it only had 9. What's going to happen? And again, not even a hiccup. It just went, and it worked like a charm. So then I thought, okay, let's back up and restore. We did that. We messed around with it. I ran all the tools on the brand new Drobo dashboard, which is really cool. You really get to find out what's going on with your drive. You get to control how it's set. And then I thought, okay, I don't know anything that can survive this. So basically I had the drive sitting there and I pulled the power supply out in the middle of a read. And then I put it back in. And I thought, okay, now it's going to have to go into 15 hours of rebuilding time or something.
Yeah.
And it was about 1 minute and 40 seconds later, and we were right back to where we were.
And the previous Drobos could never do that. What they actually did is they put a battery inside of this thing, essentially a rechargeable battery. So as you are writing, if you were to accidentally lose power, or let's say you stretched your foot under your desk and you kicked a cord, normally that would be disaster because whatever files you were writing at that moment would become corrupted. And so if you're in the middle of saving a file, that file would have been toast. And
not only that file, Rich, but potentially the entire drive.
True.
Because there's a thing called the file allocation table.
Yes.
Near and dear to me because it's the fat. And that thing gets screwed up. The data's all there, but if you screw up the file allocation table, which you can easily do if you lose power, then even though the data's there, you're going to have to go into some serious data recovery software to get it back.
That Disk Warrior, things like that. Yeah, this will actually make sure that the file completes, and then the unit basically gently shuts down. So yeah, they put in, and the thing is that, you know, these type of, some of those things like those battery backups, there are other units that have that cost thousands of dollars, but this is in a unit that really is pretty much the same price as what they used to charge for Drobos, right?
Yeah, well, and there's other things. There's Thunderbolt connections, which I really like.
Yeah, and a nice fallback is USB 3. So if you are still on a computer that only has USB 2, or you do have USB 3, you will get those speed boosts. They're not as good as Thunderbolt, but not everybody has got Thunderbolt yet, so at least you have a choice. And that's kind of unheard of, to get both USB 3 and Thunderbolt on the same unit.
It's the only RAID array in the world that has both. Now, I run Macs, as you know, so I put it into my iMac, which has 2 Thunderbolt ports. Nice fast data transfer rates, not quite as fast as my Pegasus R6, but it costs less than the Pegasus R6, so there's something to think about. And the Pegasus R6 does not have the battery backup, and it has slightly more capacity than the Pegasus for less money. So we decided, okay, we're going to do this test.
And to be fair, you say not as fast, which is true, but I've edited multiple streams of HD video off of this thing. It's perfectly fine.
I'm not saying it's not fast.
It's not as fast.
It's not as fast.
But comparison to people, if
it's still plenty darn fast.
And if you're using, let's say, USB 2 drives or FireWire 400, 800 drives,
blow those away.
Yeah, this is like 5 times faster. So you're like, oh yeah. So yeah.
I just wanted to be accurate. Okay, I just wanted to tell the whole story. So, so we figured it wasn't quite as fast, but it was fast enough that we were impressed. And then I gave it what I consider to be the worst test, and that's, you know, I haven't used Aperture in a while, but I ran Aperture off of it natively. Now, on the old Drobos, I simply couldn't do that. I could not put the library on an old Drobo and then open it and get any kind of decent performance. I could use the Drobos as I did back then, strictly as backups. But now it's fast enough to actually run an Aperture library, and believe me, an Aperture library is about the most disk-intensive thing you can open on your computer, and it did it without any kind of problem. So essentially, I became a convert. I'm back on the Drobo brigade, and we pick our sponsors here at PhotoFocus. It's not the other way around. So we asked them, and they said, sure, we'd like to sponsor you again. We never wanted to leave. So they're back sponsoring us, but they're sponsoring us because I like the product, not the other way around. I tested the product, as you can testify to, Rich.
Yeah.
Did I not say I will not take their money until I am satisfied?
Scott, and just to put a little color commentary into it, Scott and I must have had at least 2 or 3 meals together when I would bring up Drobo, and he's like, are you trying to ruin my meal? He's like, I'm not talking about this. We're not using them. You know, and he would give me plenty of reasons, and I'd be like, but no, it's not that way anymore. Yes, it is. No, it's not. I mean, we went head to head and butted heads, and I was glad to say, just like you've changed my thinking on lots of technology, obviously the product had to change your thinking, but I'm glad that you were willing to look at it, because they did completely blow up the old technology and rebuild this from the ground up. So it still looks like a Drobo, but everything inside of it is faster by multiple magnitudes. And my favorite thing is the fact that you can put in an SSD in the bottom. And what's the great thing about this is that while you can use the cheaper drives, you know, your normal, I mean, they're still high capacity, high speed drives, but you can actually put in an SSD in that bottom slot. And this takes your most recent files, the ones you're using the most, or that initial cache, and it makes things really fast because it's got a large capacity to store.
It's like the new Apple hybrid drives.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I got to tell you, I did speak with Drobo's engineers at length. They assured me there's no real reason to buy a bigger than a 64 gigabyte one, which is anywhere from $50 to $80, depending on which brands you use. But the drives that we have tested, just so everybody knows, because I do think this is important. You can put the wrong drive in this Drobo and have a bad experience, just like you can put the wrong drive in anybody's RAID array and have a bad experience. But we tested a not expensive drive at all, the Seagate Paracuda 7200 RPM 3 terabyte drive, SATA 6, 64 megabyte cache, $139 for 3 stinking terabytes.
Yeah, I just got a new one tonight. I paid $146, but yeah, I mean, that was off the shelf at a local retailer. So, I mean, these are cheap drives. I mean, imagine you could put in 15 terabytes. Of course, it's not really 15 terabytes.
It's 10.92 after you're done.
Yeah, because you end up having it set. So, and one of the things people don't realize, the whole purpose of RAID is not just to have a bunch of, oh, it's cool to have 10 gigabytes or 10 terabytes, of storage in one place. But the real cool thing is that one of those hard drives could fail with no data loss. That's why you were able to pop one out on the fly.
Exactly.
And that's good because, I'll let you in on the depressing news. For those of you that just have hard drives sitting there on a shelf, not powered up, eventually all hard drives will fail. So if that is your backup strategy, you kind of got a problem. All right. Well, I think we'll explore this more in the future, and we're very glad to have them on the show.